What's up, Vet TV? I am here with MB, also known as Michelle Dallocchio. She is a tomorrow artist and author, a social worker who specializes in artistic psychosocial rehabilitation. She served as a medic, mental health sergeant and retention NCO in the U.S. Army for 8 years. While on deployments to Ramadi, Iraq from 2004 to 2005, she served as a member of Team Lioness. She's currently resides in Italy, which is amazing. I want to talk to you about all on the side and hear all about that too. But she produces for Veteran Art Studio also on YouTube. It's nice to meet you. Did I miss anything that you feel you want to add in, Michelle?
No, you got it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you too. So for everyone who's watching, I want to make sure that we cover a lot of things today that are going to help you express what the younger version of you maybe wish they would have heard online through an interview from a veteran that has accomplished so much and maybe they can emulate. So I have to ask, you're creative. As a creative person, somebody who's in this space to where you have to make something brand new, hopefully, that introduces information that you want people to perceive a certain way. What do you feel like is the specific emotion that helps you genuinely create something that others might be able to connect to?
Well, something that I've been asked a lot in different interviews has been, is pain necessary for great art? And I think, especially coming from the veteran community, we've experienced a lot of trauma. And even though that's not something that I would encourage anybody to go out and look for, it is something that you can actually take and transmute in sort of an alchemy process to make something powerful and meaningful. So often, I think that the veteran community tends to over-identify with one aspect of their identity, which is the military experience. But I feel that even after my deployment was over, even after I got out, I felt that there's something missing. I have to go looking for something else. I'm more than just that one experience.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I ended up doing. But I struggled with it for a long time where I just didn't feel anything after I got back to the States. And I know we haven't really gotten to this part yet, but I spent a lot of time just traveling about and just basically physically running away from everything that was hurting me. So I couldn't connect to my art right away. I basically was somebody who loved painting, drawing, you name it. If there was scratch paper and a pen or a pencil around, I was creating something. After Ramadi, I was just done. Everything was gray. Nothing spoke to me anymore. I was just over everything. I was over life. And it was a terrible feeling, because as somebody who is creative, somebody who does love to make art, it felt like a part of me had died. And I really came to terms with that when I redeployed. So it really took a lot of, I guess, figuring myself out, allowing myself to find different ways to express myself through writing, through creating visual art, through dancing, that I was able to kind of put all these different artistic pieces together and say, okay, well, maybe this new world ahead of me, obviously the old world is done. Basically everything about my life before is not the same anymore, obviously. And I'm basically stepping ahead to create a new world and to basically rediscover my meaning of home. So the creative process, I found that every time that I had taken a painful memory and created something with it, a lot of the dreams, nightmares associated with that would dissipate, that they didn't have any ownership over me. So by creating something tangible, a work of art, poetry, anything, whether it's literary form, visual form, performance, it was outside of me and I didn't over-identify with it as much anymore. And it was out there, I acknowledged it, and I was able to see it as something that wasn't owning me, but I owned that piece of art. I owned that memory, even though it was a terrible memory. I was able to create something beautiful out of the aftermath.
So it's kind of like, taking the power away from the boogeyman almost and using it.
Basically.
Yeah. Do you feel like some of your best work as a singer or as an artist who act like great art page, by the way, it's beautiful.
Oh,
I
thank
want to
you.
make sure we plug all your socials after this. And do you feel like some of your best work has been created by pain or by the version of you that's healed from the pain?
You know, I've been having a lot of conversations lately based on my recent art series, which is Nocturnal Confessions,
Mhm.
which is really dark. It looks a little cyberpunk in a way, but
Yeah.
I have been sharing a lot of my personal insights about trauma, shadow work, and the journey through the dark night of the soul. This is considering, PTSD or high functioning PTSD, major
Mhm.
depression. Um, and it sparked a lot of different conversation where I've had people reaching out to me a lot more and just saying, hey, this is speaking to me. I don't know why. And I just wanted to reach out and say, how did you make this? And how did you come to create this, strange world that looks like it belongs in VR somehow? And for me, I really wanted to take something this year. This is something that I've been sitting on for a really long time.
Mhm.
I wanted to take something this year and really talk about the journey through shadow work. And this is more referencing Jung and going through the process of diving below the surface and getting into the subconscious and unconscious mind, tapping into fears, anxieties, everything that makes us afraid of who we are deep down inside and facing it.
Yeah.
And when we do that, when we have that self-acceptance, that everything else seems a lot less scary. So, but to answer your question about pain and transmuting that into art, um, because it's something that's unavoidable for me,
Mhm.
that I've had pain all throughout my life, that it's not something that I can speak on like, yeah, like this 10-year period was great and nothing happened. And, I didn't make great art.
Wow.
It didn't really happen for me that way. All I do know is that every time that I do decide to dig a little deeper and push myself a bit more, something great happens. So I do encourage everybody else that I know who's in the creative space, whether they're making jewelry, whether they're painting, whether they're getting into digital art, that this is something that they should be also pushing themselves a little further every single time that they're getting to these points where they're feeling a bit self-conscious about their art and what it means to them.
I think that's beautiful advice. I think that's beautiful advice too. So you've came so far since you left the military. Would the younger military version of you be surprised with where you're at today?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
How happy would she be? How proud would she be?
Oh,
She
super
would
proud, super
cry.
happy.
She'd
Yes.
cry.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, when I got back, I mean, when I got out in 2006, yeah,
Uh-huh.
2006, I mean, I was just a very numbed out version of myself.
Mhm.
I think I would be close to crying because I couldn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And this was going on for years too. I mean, I was just going through the motions, feeling like I was living on borrowed time, that I didn't deserve to be here
Yeah.
after everything that I experienced. But it was just something that when I do look back from that perspective that you're speaking about, um, yeah, I didn't see a future when I came back. So knowing that, like, I live in Tuscany, I'm basically living like the artist dream here. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's great and everything. And but I feel all the more grateful and thankful for where I'm at. And, even for every little like inconvenience I might experience while being like a newcomer living here in Italy,
Mm.
I'm just like, I'm just here for the snacks and the views,
Oh,
like you can't
yeah.
fucking harsh my vibe. Get the fuck out of here.
No,
Like,
because
no.
it's just not fair that, like what, 22-year-old Michelle, maybe
Mhm.
22 when you get out of the military. She has to
Oh,
hear,
hot
"Oh,
24.
oh, so I'm an artist living in Italy. Oh, wow. I don't believe it." Like that's like that is just like somebody wrote on a piece of paper, where
Yeah.
do you want to be, 15, 16 years from now? I want to be an artist living in Italy. Like it's so cool. And I have daughters. So women like you, I love the fact that there's so many role models like you, and it's our job to get you out there more and to make sure that like my daughters can say, "There's somebody I want to emulate." Like easily accessible human being I want to emulate. Maybe not have to go through that amount of pain,
Okay.
to get to where you're at. And that's what I want to ask you next is,
Mhm.
what was the biggest time waster between you when you got out of the military to you now? What was it? Was it the pain? Was it mistakes that you made? Was it being numb? Like, well, you can't control that, but what was the, yeah, what was the biggest time waster, I guess?
Oh, wow. A lot of things in the past few years really came full circle. And I really haven't talked much about it, whether it's social media or, otherwise. But the biggest time waster was giving my energy to people who didn't deserve it.
Mm. Is that,
And
what,
that
may
would
I
be
ask?
more
Yeah,
relationships that were
relationships.
toxic, abusive. And, I ended up getting out of, I don't know how much you read into the Desert Warrior or how much you know about it, but I go into the whole like terrible divorce
Mhm.
scenario. But yeah, I feel that in many ways that felt like a huge waste of my time because I was very honest and open with somebody who I loved, and it was an illusion,
Oh,
and that it was basically a farce, and it felt like I gave my time to somebody who I noticed a few red flags in the beginning, but
mhm.
I gave them so much of the benefit of the doubt that, and often for people in mental health or in
Mhm.
these kinds of spaces, we're so used to rescuing other people that we don't think about who the hell is going to rescue us.
Yeah,
And it's basically, a coping mechanism for people who have been through complex polytrauma is we're so good at helping other people because we don't want to see other people go through what we did.
yeah,
And we don't take the time to think about, well, what are my needs? What am I getting out of this, that I'm doing all of this legwork and
yeah.
I'm not getting that reciprocation? So even though it felt like a colossal waste of time, I think if I didn't go through that experience,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have basically launched me on a very different journey that really changed my life. So even though it feels like a waste of time, or if I could go back in time and change anything, I probably wouldn't change anything because I
Yeah.
needed that wake up call to make me realize that I need to put myself first.
Do you feel like you have a connection to a lot of the younger veterans getting out? I want to know, what is your connection to, like, in your mind, do you feel like you are able to connect to all veterans, or in particular, just women veterans?
It really depends. So I've connected with Vietnam veterans, especially when I got back into the art space. I got back
Mhm.
into it in Arizona, and typically anytime that I've try to put my foot through the door on any kind of creative veteran space, I would
Mhm.
just get the door slammed in my face and saying,
Why?
oh, well,
Is it
it's an
sexism? I feel like there's so much
you want the
toxicity.
do you want
Yeah,
the
yeah.
honest answer? All right.
Yes, please, please, please.
So basically what I had experienced, from the beginning and getting involved back into the veteran space,
Yeah.
especially with the post 9/11 crowd, that I felt that everybody was kind of like bucking for future congressional rep or senator, and everybody was building a persona, and nobody I
Really?
felt like I was talking to was real. And it really pissed me off. And because I've always been who I am right now,
Yeah.
and that I wanted a real connection. I wanted to make sense of my experience, but everything that I had tried to latch onto, whether it was reading a memoir or going to one of these veterans events when
Mhm.
it's talking about community reintegration, that I felt empty. I felt
Yeah.
persistently empty with it. But when I got back into the artistic space in Arizona, I was really hesitant about it because anytime that I dealt with the post 9/11 crowd, it was very
Mhm.
like white and brotastic, where it was
Mhm.
like, hey, little lady, you're going to have to wait your turn. And I was like, fuck you. No, like, I'm not waiting my turn. I'm going to go build my own table.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here for this. You might be able to talk to somebody else this way, but you're sure as shit not going to talk to me this way. And I think that having that kind of attitude, like, got me a reputation, but I really don't give a shit. Like, because having boundaries for, you know, being vulnerable in these spaces is important. And
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't respect those boundaries, you can basically tell them to fuck off. Nobody deserves your energy when they didn't earn it.
Yeah.
So dealing with that crowd for so long, I just felt that I don't really fit in. So when I got to Arizona, there was an artistic collective that was
Mhm.
predominantly Native American, and they had like, these different art shows that were taking place in and mostly in Phoenix.
Mhm.
And I was working for Arizona Department of Veteran Services at the time, doing, educational educational benefits and
Mhm.
things like that. Nothing that I was getting at the time, but somebody I was working with named Gabe Forsberg, who is an amazing advocate in Arizona, said that, hey, you might want to reach out to Jim. He's a Vietnam veteran. I was like, nope, absolutely not. Like, I will not reach out to him. And because I had experienced, American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, just basically say, hey, we have a ladies or women's auxiliary where they bake cookies for the men. And I was like, nah, fuck that. Like, no, absolutely not. Like, you can maybe bake me a cookie and I'll come.
Yeah, I've never gotten it. So like I'm Marine Corps infantry, right? And I
Mhm.
feel like I've never gotten. I feel like maybe I don't want to. What's the word I'm looking for? Infanticize, infantil, like where you try and make an infant out of something almost. But I was so oblivious to so many things because I was raised specifically by women. I didn't have a
Mhm.
single male influence in my life until I was 19 or 20, to where I was
Oh,
already kind
okay.
of. I knew more about crystals than I knew about, I don't know, like how to change oil in a car or something like that. So I was just very, very raised in like a hippie women household. So when I got out of the military, I've always found that when I speak to, my counterpart, the women veterans, a lot of them are always like waiting for me to say something bro vet, waiting for me to say something like kind of negative or toxic towards them. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think there needs to be a reason for that because that's poor social skills. So I want
Yeah.
to ask you, what mistake do you see a lot of younger people make who are trying to get into your creative space? What mistake do you see them make that holds them back? Is it social skills? Is it picking the wrong people to speak to on an entrepreneurial level? Like, what do you think it is? What holds them back?
Hmm. I think that a big thing, whether it's, and kind of like answering your other question too, I think a big problem in the veteran space is that we want to be listened to, but we don't want to do the listening.
Mm,
And that has been a big, big barrier, even for me helping other people, because
mhm,
I'm always willing to help people out, whether they're, no matter what their medium is, and just say, okay, well, maybe you can try this, or if you're trying to sell art online, have, just go with the e-commerce route. This is how you can set up a shop that's really affordable until you want to do other things beyond print on demand,
mhm.
and so on. So I don't mind giving people, you know, tips on how to kind of like, go around the system, or just kind of like, make their life a bit easier. But I think the biggest barrier for at least one-on-one interaction that I've had with other veterans has been them walking in with a lot of assumptions about who I am and what I've done.
Okay.
And that's been a big issue. And I might know somebody who is perfect for them. But as soon as that happens, I'm like, absolutely not.
I
Like,
think
I will
so too.
not
Yeah.
connect you to that person because your name is going to be attached to mine
Mhm.
and you will ruin my relationship with that person. So, absolutely not. And it might seem like, it's you know, a difficult way to go, but it's like, these are my contacts. Why should I share, these contacts with you when you're obviously being very rude to me
Yeah.
and condescending and disrespectful? So I think that's a really big thing that people need to just get over themselves, get
Mhm.
past the ego, and just like, if you have some shadow work to do,
Mhm.
go do that with a therapist. I'm not your rehab.
Right.
Don't take out whatever aggression you have with me. That's fine. If you need to talk to somebody, like, I'm here as a friend, a peer, an ally, but I will not be treated like garbage. And then you're going to ask me for something.
Yeah, I think and a lot of civilians kind of perceive that veterans are all these cookie cutter perfect people, and then it's hard because you'll meet some and it's like you can't tell them what's holding them back because you'll shatter an
Mhm.
ego. So it's like maybe
Yeah.
they don't know, and that's why it's good to have mentors like yourself around. I mean, you you were my hero when I was joining. Like I was in middle school and high school seeing what was going on in Iraq, seeing pictures being posted to bulletin boards, and then I joined in early 2008. So it's like you're a source of information that hopefully there's like good communication to where you want to help the younger. It's not like you're gatekeeping success or something like that. You already have a type of success that a lot of people would want, and it's good for them to see an interview like this and say, okay, that's a mistake I might not even know that I'm making is just having poor social skills and dialogue
Right.
when I'm speaking to somebody who could be a mentor or a coach. So
Right.
what is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to the way people are perceiving you? You said something about that. They have assumptions.
Yeah. So typically when I do meet somebody in the veteran community that doesn't, really know anything about me, that we're just meeting face to face for the first time.
Mm,
And, it's just, a simple conversation. They do their elevator pitch and whatnot, or just share what they're up to.
mhm.
And I'll say, oh yeah, I was in the Army. And typically, even before I say anything, they're like, Air Force. Or it's just
Oh,
something, yeah, it's just something, a response like that, where it's like, I haven't even opened my mouth yet,
yeah,
but you have all the answers ready for me based off of what you're seeing.
yeah,
And you have no idea who I am. And now I'm like, the walls come down and there's no further communication desired. And I'm just going to be like, yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I'll call you, but it's not
yeah.
happening.
That's so funny. I get that too, by the way. They see me, they're like Air Force. I'm like, no, man, Marine. So I'm tough. Like people see me, they're like Coast Guard, right? No, like right away. No, no, no. What would the future version of you say 10 years from now, after the past is done, we've learned how
Mm.
you got to where you are? What would that person say when it comes to a goal that you wish you would have just accomplished sooner already? 10 years from now, what is something that you wish you would have just done sooner?
Oh, I would say it's what I'm working on now, which has taken me such a long time.
Yeah.
Um, I wrote a book based off of the language of the Mariana Islands called 𝙎𝙧𝙧𝙚.
Okay.
And it's an endangered language because for a really long time it wasn't allowed to be spoken.
Mhm,
The Marianas were a colony of Spain for almost 400 years,
mhm.
and then Germany took over, and then Japan took over, and then of course obviously World War II, and then now it's a U.S. territory.
Mhm.
But the language issue has been a big one. So it's something that's dying out in the community. And I wrote the book in 2015, published it in 2015. And I've been really just shopping around with different, like, platforms to get it in an app and all this other stuff. And I took so long. And it wasn't until the pandemic hit there that I was like, and I don't know, my perspective changed on so many
Mhm.
things where like, I need to do this because who knows what's going to happen. Or I was getting more requests for it too. Actually, my book sales for it went up a lot during the pandemic, where people wanted to
Yeah.
learn languages or learn a new skill. So now I'm in the process of getting this done, and I wish I had done this like a decade before.
Are
But
you are you fluent, or did you learn it later on out of appreciation for the culture?
I grew up with household
Mhm,
level, like, I can't really say anything like right now, but just like some of the things that
mhm.
we were told growing up, just in case somebody is a speaker. I'm
Yeah,
not going to say it, but yeah, like a lot of different things, like mostly like colloquial,
yeah.
household, samoro. So growing up and trying to, let's say write a book, I would
Mhm.
definitely need to be a lot more careful. I would want to double, triple check my grammar.
Yeah.
Um, Even with anything I write, I go by my mom, which there are not a lot of people who can read and write it
Mhm.
anymore. And that's also another big deal. But even if I feel really confident, I still get it checked
Yeah.
because and it's always helpful to have an extra pair of eyes too. Like anybody who's doing any kind of like long form writing is going to want an editor. So yeah, mom's the editor, that she'll be like, oh, you missed something. I'm like, oh, thank you. But yeah, I so wish that I had got this out in an app form and just did it. But I was dragging my feet and saying like, yeah, I'll get to it next year, next year, next year. And now I'm actually at a stage where it's almost ready to launch.
All right. So everything that we've spoken about has made me so happy because it's what I thought I was walking into at the beginning of the interview. And I feel like I've learned more about you than I would have from a book or from an online article or, the elevator pitch. But there's still a group of young ladies who might watch this, who are 21, 22, 23 years old, who are getting out of the military and they do not have a particular female voice. I would hope that they would have a female voice, not another male voice. But what would you tell them when they feel how you felt? Because you felt like you felt nothing. You felt like you felt angry. You felt like however you felt, and those feelings are valid. And I would have to assume a lot of them feel that way. What would you tell them if they saw you right now?
Mm, that
You like
they're
the
getting ready to get
questions?
out. I
You like them?
do. I love
Thank
these
you.
questions. Thank you. No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, everything that I was looking for when I was getting out didn't feel so accessible because a lot of it didn't exist yet.
Hmm.
I mean, there still isn't a lot of diversity of voices in the female veteran memoir sphere. It's getting slightly better, and especially like going through different organizations and people who can speak about different difficult subjects with the women veteran experience. Yeah, I mean, I really wish there was a better transition process. I know Minority Veterans of America is working really hard on that. And that's one of the few veteran organizations that I will work with. But yeah, I mean, I really feel that coming out of it, I would just say that things get better if you will get out of your own way. That a lot of times we will stand in our own way. We are, firm in our conviction that shit's not going to change, and that this is the way it is, or this is how relationships are, and that's just the way it is, period. And that you're setting yourself up for failure by thinking that way, and that you can think and dream bigger, and things can happen if you will just allow it to happen.
I think that's beautiful advice. Vet TV, this has been one of my favorite interviews that I have done with 𝙎𝙩𝙧𝙚𝙬. See, I remember the pronunciation too. It rhymes with Pinocchio. And can you
Bravo.
thank you. Can you correct me on my pronunciation? It's not Chamorro. It's not Chamorro, is it?
You can
It's,
say that with,
how do you
with,
say it? How would you like someone to say it to appreciate the culture more?
so the CH is actually a S, or like a
That's what I thought.
TS.
Yeah.
Samoro.
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 It's so pretty. Okay, I'm obsessed with languages, by the way. I'm getting off track, but I'm obsessed with languages and cultures. Like that's what I do with
Oh, I'll share the app with you when it's done.
that's what I do with all my free time. Like that's my hobby for personal learning too. Vet TV, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Appreciate it.